On July 23, 2021, a 66-year-old employee was working for the company as an equipment operator when the incident occurred. On their first day, the employee completed an orientation covering the occupational health and safety management system, including safety rules, rights and responsibilities, hazard management, personal protective equipment, safe work procedures, emergency protocols, and hazard reporting. Employees are expected to assess any new or modified hazards they encounter. The employee reviewed and signed a hazard assessment specific to their role as an equipment operator, addressing hazards like equipment access and material handling. No record exists of a hazard assessment on the day of the incident. On the day of the incident, the employee was tasked by his supervisor to empty material out of Bin 3 and Bin 4 of the plant so that new material could be added. The weather was quite warm that day, 28 degrees Celsius. The task of emptying material from the plant's bins required the employee to push the material toward the small conveyor belt at the bottom of each bin. To carry out this task, the employee climbed a ladder to the top of each bin to be emptied and pushed the material toward the small conveyor at the bottom of each bin using a shovel. As the small conveyor belt moved, it would drop the material onto the larger conveyor belt. The material would then be transported off the end of the larger conveyor belt and into the trailer of a truck being operated by a truck driver, and would deliver the materials away from the site. The employee and his supervisor had completed the task of emptying material from the plant's bins on previous occasions. Both the small conveyor belt at the bottom of each bin and larger conveyor belt running the entire length of the plant were energized and moving while the employee was completing this task. While the employee was emptying material from the plant's bins, the supervisor was in the equipment control room at the site. This control room, located near the plant, supplies power to the plant and other site equipment. From there, the supervisor monitored the material as it was transported along the plant's larger conveyor belt. After the employee finished emptying the material from Bin 4 of the plant, his supervisor turned off the small conveyor belt under Bin 4 and turned on the small conveyor belt under Bin 3 so that the employee could begin emptying the material from Bin 3. Approximately 5 minutes after turning on the small conveyor belt under Bin 3 of the plant, the supervisor noticed that material was no longer running down the larger conveyor belt. The supervisor then left the equipment control room with the plant still running and went to check in with the employee. The supervisor climbed a ladder to reach the top of Bin 3 of the plant, peered into the bin, and saw the employee on his side on the small conveyor belt at the bottom of the bin. The supervisor observed that the employee's upper body, including his head, was covered in material, and that his lower body was uncovered with his legs bent. The supervisor ran back to the equipment control room to shut down the plant and called for first aid assistance using the two-way radio in the emergency control room. No one responded to the two-way radio call. The supervisor then went back to the plant and climbed into Bin 3 to extract the employee from the material. The employee was unconscious. The supervisor then ran back to the equipment control room to call 911. He then provided the site address to the 911 operator and asked for an ambulance. The supervisor returned to the plant and verbally called out for help from the top of Bin 3. 2 contractors from a trucking company heard the supervisor's call for help. They went to the plant to meet the supervisor. The supervisor began performing CPR on the employee. The supervisor and the contractor were unable to successfully resuscitate the employee. Another truck driver on site also heard the yelling and calls for help coming from the plant. He ran to the plant and was told to call an ambulance. The employee then went to the main gate of the site so he could get the location of the site for the 911 operator. Shortly after the police and paramedics arrived, the police extracted the employee from Bin 3 of the plant with the aid of the supervisor and the contractor, who had remained with the employee inside Bin 3. Paramedics performed on-site triage once the employee was out of Bin 3 of the plant, but he was soon after declared deceased by the paramedics. Since there were no eyewitnesses that saw how the employee became covered in material in Bin 3 at the time of the incident, the specific circumstances surrounding his death and its exact cause remain unknown. Following the incident, the company implemented a number of corrective actions, including A. Placing decals on each side of the plant's bins stating, "Danger, do not enter hoppers." B. Installing a catwalk on top of the plant allows safer employee access to materials in the bins, aiming to reduce future safety incidents, though it isn't required by the manufacturer's specifications. C. Installing shaker equipment on the plant. Though not required by the manufacturer, it is intended to safely and efficiently move material toward the small conveyor belts at the bin's base. D. Requiring all employees to attend a 4-hour paid safety reorientation. E. Coaching supervisors on the importance of reviewing each work activity in more detail when conducting hazard assessments and effectively communicating hazard control measures to employees on site. F. Completing an updated hazard assessment for the cold bin feed hopper clean out to change material task, the task the employee was performing during the incident, with supervisor involvement in the assessment process. G. Reviewing and updating safety program materials and safety manuals contained at the site, and ensuring supervisors are familiar with their contents and how they can be accessed. As an additional corrective measure, the company installed deflector plates in bins 1, 2, and 3 of the plant to reduce weight on the small conveyor belts. Bin 4 already had deflector plates installed before the incident. These actions show the company's commitment to improving safety and preventing future incidents. Structural upgrades, new equipment, clear signage, and employee training address key risks. Involving supervisors in hazard assessments and updating safety materials further supports a stronger safety culture. Together, these steps help reduce the chance of similar incidents.